And our forefathers almost got the program started. The crisis was between Julius Nyerere and Kambarage Nyerere and Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah was saying, let's start the process like right now. Let's start moving towards single army, single currency, single, industrialization. And Nyerere then came around and says, no, we cannot do it immediately. Let's do it progressively. And unfortunately, for the past 62 years, we've been doing it progressively and going nowhere. So the 25th of May was actually meant to be our first Independence Day as Africans, so to speak. And we lost some traction because while we were planning that, the wars kept on raging. The same whites that were in Ghana, then when Ghana got independence, some of them ran down, further down into Kenya and etc. Then the Mau Mau Wars started. Then Tanzania was also in trouble. Chama Chama Pinduza, Zambia, and it looks like the independence was coming further down. In Zimbabwe, Chimurenga, Mkondo Sizwe in South Africa. Now South Africa being one of the last countries to receive liberation, of course, not forgetting Congo, Eritrea, and Somalia, who are still struggling in the trenches. But each country came around with its own pontification of the colonial borders that were there. And our presidents lost the plot because they went to war to liberate the country from the white people and return the country back to its rightful owners, who are the indigenous leaders. But unfortunately, from coming from war, all our pioneer leaders, be it Julius Nyerere, be it Kenneth Kaunda, be it Robert Mugabe, be it Mandela, they sat in the chairs of the indigenous leaders and tried to play a girlfriend to a democratic neo-colonial system. At the end of the day, our own leaders became managers of the same colonial system that was disenfranchising us. An African can't carry diamonds, he can't carry gold, he can't own this, he can't own this, it's in the constitution. But who wrote the constitution? It's the same colonial people. So our present political leaders, unless and until they begin to have a serious conversation around the transformation of this democratic constitutionalization, we will still find ourselves that we now have new managers of the colonial project who are our own leaders. So Africa Day for me would rather mean to self-determination. How do we gain ourselves and win ourselves off the breast of colonial ideologies and in all its fraternities, be it economics, be it politics, and etc. And we are losing time because we think it's a 1 day per year, when in fact the Africa Day for me says, you are this, then continue to live as such for the rest of the year. Thank you.
Bishop, let me come in quickly. In your view, you've narrated what the Africa Freedom Day was supposed to be and what it is not. And I'm grateful that you also talked about the difference in opinion between His Excellency President Nyerere and His Excellency Kwame Nkrumah. What do you think then is the greatest challenge that faces Africa, and realizing this getting to a point where we are weaned off, to borrow words, we are weaned off the breast of the colonial and imperialistic masters?
It's an octopus. Colonialism is an octopus. And if you have an opportunity, I will recommend that you find one of the books that I submitted entitled African Questions and African Solutions. And in that book, I try to look at the 7 heads of the octopus and how the liberation you're talking about is not going just to happen from by cutting off one of the heads. You think that you have killed the octopus. The other 6 are still functioning. And you cannot never be in the constant business of clearing up cobwebs in a house and you don't know where the spider is. You may end up doing lots of work which is unfruitful. So you may want to start considering, how do we liberate ourselves on the governance level? Now this speaks of constitutionalization, this speaks of meritocracy, this will speak of democracy, this will speak of indigenous governance system, monarchies, etc. And look at models around the world. Are all progressive countries democratic? The answer is a big fat no. When did you last hear of the elections in Britain and etc.? When did you last hear elections in UAE? When did you hear of elections in China and etc.? And some of these countries that are actually very far from what we might want to term as democracy. They have found their own way of governing themselves. So you may want to start considering the governance head, how do we run on that and liberate ourselves. Next to that will be the business model and the commercial business. How do we liberate ourselves from colonial commercialization of our assets, the banking systems and etc. And how do we come back to indigenous banking and economic systems? Zunde, for example, in Shona, Shandira Pangwe, Chama Chama Pinduza, working together, Umoja, and etc. Did we not have a sense of banking? What was the role of cows and trade and butter and etc.? Why would you exchange value for paper money?
For paper money. Now, on Thursday, when Keith Van Tel and I were here, and Frank as well, we talked about the fact that Africans sometimes try to act as though we only got into politics and into governance after colonialization. But the truth of the matter is that we governed ourselves as a people. Our forefathers did govern themselves as a people. And yet, much as we say that we fought off our colonial masters, they left us their language, they left us their constitutions, and we have run with them 6 decades down the road. How do you redress that, especially now that you have an opportunity to address generations such as ours, the ones that are supposed to take over? Should we continue business as usual? How do we kill this octopus? How do we get rid of this spider so that we stop what you and our forefathers have been doing in the last 6 decades of clearing off cobwebs and still feeding the spider?
The issue actually is more painful, is that the African political terrain is simply swapping hyenas with foxes. Because until you have a political mindset that knows the quality of the colonial system, and you go there not to manage it, but to transform it, we will still find that every 5 years we'll be changing and putting another fox and wonder why the sheep are constantly disappearing. Meanwhile, we don't know actually that the system in which we are running around, this whole presidential facade of Africans, we have a new president, we have a new minister, it's all a joke of the highest order. Because some of those people that go there, they can't even spell their names, for crying out loud. You go into the Minister of Sport, I heard some people arguing about soccer here, to our embarrassment, that we could speak so much and spend so much energy on colonial entertainment, as if before the white men came we did not have our own sports. The Minister of Sports is there to manage colonial sports, rugby, football, cricket, darts, and what. And you wonder what happened to Mlabalaba? What happened to our intelligent mathematical games which we used to play, which are much more intellectual? So even when you look at the Minister of Agriculture, he goes there to sell, GMOs. You look at the Minister of Health, he goes there to make sure that we get more tablets. Who has stopped to say what are the indigenous healing components that we can include and incorporate to the health system, to the education system? Look at entertainment. We're here to be a Minister of Entertainment. You're here approving some contracts from Hollywood and from other movie houses. What happened to us finding our own entertainment space and owning the space of ourselves? So hence I'm saying you go there and you look for Uncle Toms who must manage the colonial machinery. Because throughout the 7 fraternities, you cut me short, I only gave you 2. I was going to give you the other 5. That you look at governance, you look at business, you look at education. What do we go to school to do? What do we go to school to do, honestly? After you have memorized the history of Britain and the history of China and the Bolshevik wars, how does that convert into industry? Now that you know how old was Julius Caesar?
The Bismarck system of alliances.
Julius Caesar, who killed Julius Caesar? How did Napoleon lose his war? Okay, create a job out of that. So you would find that There is a total disjoint. Even
I hope Vantel is listening.
Even the ones who call themselves the most educated, many times, they are not educated in inventing, in creating, in innovation. They are
basically schooled.
No, but school has not gone through us. Been to say
we've gone through school, but school
has not gone through us because we've not learned the art of learning. We've learned the art of memorizing.
Bishop, I was thinking, because you've had a number of these conversations even on your platform, even the books that you have read. As African continent, are we going to continue lamenting? Are you also part of the group lamenting, oh, Africa, here we are, this is what we need to do? What's the beginning point?
I will not spare you for saying lamenting. When a person is beaten, he must cry first. Don't become sadistic that you find me hurt and I'm crying and you want to undermine my tears and say just move on. No. Let's cry first.
That's being narcissistic.
Allow us to cry first.
For how long?
Hold on. We've been beaten for 400 years. And there's no way you can expect a system that has entrenched itself in our DNA for 400 years to be winned over in 2 weeks. But however, to be more progressive, if you would watch the entire content of my presentation, it's not just about mourning. It's about crying first, but after crying, what do we do to transform and change our trajectory? And I would want maybe to present a picture so that we understand that the transformation is not going to be cosmetic. It's going to be thorough. So there's no way you can take soldiers from the streets and you give them guns tomorrow and say start shooting. You will not come back with all of them. They will die. So why do you take them for training? Why do you show them how to survive before you can take them to the battlefront? And right now, you as young people, you are ready to go and fight. But I wonder, and I doubt it, if you even know what you are going to shoot and how you are going to shoot and the strategy. So there are two types of wars. You must always remember as a young man. The first war is the war of generals, where they wake up every morning and they go and sit in the boardroom and they put a map of the place where they are going. And they study the weather. And they study the raw material. They study the food supplies. They study their manpower. They study their artillery, their anti-airs and stuff like that, and see how do you position it. And they're pushing things on that board. 6 months sometimes, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. China's been doing it for 30 years, planning for America. The day you finally say, let's go to war, I bet you that you have a clear understanding of what you're going to be doing. So as young people, now you want all these things to yourselves. But I tell you, if I give you $10 million right now, what are you going to do? You're going to buy a Lamborghini, fly to Dubai, spend all that money and give it back to the system. Because that's the utopia that education, entertainment has actually planted in your mind. So the question is, would you take 10 million and go back to the village, drill balls, go and buy a mine, employ people, fix up some roads? If I give you, it's your money, will you put it in a hospital? And you think that your leaders are different from you? The answer is no. The software controls the hardware. And until we understand the depth of confusion that leadership has, it's a crisis. It's a crisis of the highest order. Because we are in power, but we're not in control. So how do we transform that?
So being in power without control.
What's the use of it? What's the use of being in power and you're not in control and your nose are being pulled? As Ruto was saying the other day, these guys are all acting big around Africa here. When they get to Britain, they're shipped in a bus and made to sit at the back of a room because you're not important to us. We will value what is valuable to us. So until we have some sense of self-worth as Africans, the question is where and how do we need to transform?
How do we develop that sense of worth?
Number one, kill the education system. Rewrite it. I will explain a simple definition.
Great, yeah.
Go ahead.
As a solution.
Okay.
Stop going to school if you don't know what you're going to be schooled on. So number one, walk the village of Kafue, walk the village of Kabwe and Copperbelt and Livingstone. Walk the streets, see what the problems are. Put up a proposal, research problem. I want to solve the problem of 1, water, 2, sanitation, 3, unemployment, and 4, and 5, and 6. Identify one of them. Then walk up to a university and say to them, I want to solve this problem in the community. Let your 4 years of academic studies be solving your problem that you want to implement within the community. How do you want to solve this problem? You network with other students who will help you solve these problems. Professors are there who will help you solve these problems. Funders are there who will help you solve this problem. By the time you finish your academic pursuit, you are not going to be looking for a job. You go back in the community to go back. So in other words, your studying is towards yourself. Your studying is not a passport for you to escape from yourself. Now, this makes a big difference. Because many of us right now, after graduation, we have passports to go where our skills will be appreciated. Why? Because our ground does not know. It's a sad state of affair that a Zambian student can graduate to become a master's and a PhD and still does not know how to process, dig, or make a product out of copper. Yet you are the biggest producers of copper in this world. And the minerals are underneath your houses. But throughout your study, you don't even know how to identify it, how to clean it up, and how to convert this great resource. So our education is here, our resources are here, and the two have never been meant to meet each other. So how about we start a new curriculum that says, if you are a Zambian, what is Zambia? Where is Zambia? What do we have in Zambia?
Frank mentioned something interesting on Thursday. He says it's amazing that for a country that can export rosewood and other very, very, very rare forms of forestry, we actually do import toothpicks.
Yeah, I mean, it can get worse than that. So the question is, what are you sitting in class to do? To export your skills to Britain? And then you talk about brain drain. Because there are three phases you need to understand also. Phase number one is what we call primary industries. Phase number two, I'll use a very lateral method of explaining here. Phase number two are secondary economies. Phase number three are what we call tertiary economies. So let's start nicely. Primary economies are those that are simply producing raw materials, strictly, whether it is copper, it is coal, it is rosewood, it is whatever, it is mineral, it is coltan right here. Just dig more, bring us more stuff. Then the secondary industries remove the impurities of these minerals. Platinum, for example, the one Zimbabwe is losing right now, has 18 other minerals that are in it. The people from outside are only buying raw material, platinum, and they're only paying for the stones, raw as they are. When they take these stones into their secondary industries, they separate gold, they separate uraniums, they separate 18 other minerals within one mineral, but they only paid for the raw. And the rest is never coming home, it's disappearing. So the secondary industries, they begin to separate these minerals and make them into solid. Now iron is iron, copper is copper, and etc., and cobalt is cobalt. And then the tertiary industries harvest from the secondary industries to make products. Here we are. This is where China is, where Africa is still struggling with primary industries. Dig more, cut more trees, harvest more, plant more. But the secondary guys are doing less. You don't need to dig as more, but process as more. But the final guy who is going to be selling the final product is making much more money than all of us. So we need as Africans now to say, how do we filter down the tertiary industries into the secondary industries and possibly be able to move also the secondary industries into the primary industries? By the end of the day, Zambia should stop exporting copper.
All right,
but final products.
Bishop, before the other boy comes in, my question to you is how Africa, there's been a realization, Africa is endowed with so much wealth. The Democratic Republic of Congo, you've mentioned even the country, Zambia, where we are right now. But how is this continent going to coexist with other continents across the globe? Do you also believe in coexistence, Africa, living globalization, the global village, living, in tandem with other continents?
Very interesting question. The question is, how do you live with a person that is abusing you? You're asking me, how do we share a room with a rapist? How do you share a room with your abuser? They need to be put in a space where they can be managed, because their behavior has not changed for 400 years. And we'll be fools in our generation to think that our coexistence with the Europeans and the Americans will be on equal footing. Because one, their appetite for raw materials, their appetite for our cultural diversion and perversion rather, and their appetite for control and colonization will not change because they're in the room. So you want to ask me a question, how are we going to coexist? If coexistence must happen, then there must be mutual understanding and mutual respect of cultures. Africans have never gone to America and asked them to circumcise or get into polygamy. We've never gone there and asked them to play drums when their loved ones are dead. We've never imposed our culture on the Europeans and the Americans. The question is, why must they be coming to us and imposing their culture and coexisting with a man who's got an atomic bomb, coexisting with a man who's got ICC only to judge and rule you and not judge himself? Coexistence? Coexistence?
All right. One of the boys, Peter, joins us. Peter, good morning.
Good morning.
Boys, Peter joins us. Peter, good morning.
Good morning. Interesting conversations going on.
Great. Throw in.
I think for me, I'll probably be echoing some of the questions that you said.
All right.
At what point then do we mark as the beginning point of either the revolution or the change that we want, either in leadership or maybe in the governance of the country? What are those prerequisites that when put in place, we then say, this now is the start? Because some of the challenges I've had at a personal level when I look at my country is that they will come up with all these national development plans. First, I think we're in the 7th now, right?
Eighth with the new dawn.
Even
Yes.
the first one is not complete. If you look at what the objectives of the first one were, it's not complete. Now, at what point do we realize that these are the prerequisites set now? Let's begin to move.
You're asking a scientific question to a social dynamic environment that is multifaceted in a matrix of things that influence the very question that you're asking. At what point? Maybe we have moved already. The first point was to remove the colonials from power, so to speak, and put ourselves. But the question is, when we put ourselves in power, did we know what that means? Did we know what we needed to transform? And by the way, off the record, sir, we don't need politicians to change a country. Viva this and viva this does not change anything. What transforms and what develops a country are engineers, are implementers, are electricity suppliers, machinery people, people who can dig, people who can build. Those are the people who transform. So for you to take a fellow comrade because he speaks good English and you put him in a position of power and you hope that it will transform, the answer is a big no. What do we need? We need to convert our own institutions, both of learning and development, to become the drivers. I even suggest that sometimes, I was saying this in Zimbabwe the other day, that we may need to take politicians and lock them up in one room somewhere and have national development agency on one end, which then looks at all the ministries in one room and say, what is the budget? How do we begin to develop each one of these, like technocrats who are not in power today, tomorrow they're chased away, this whole 3 term, 2 years, because this development has become a political appointment. And the political appointments are only 3 to 4 to 5 years old. The question is, how much difference can you make in a country to transform it in 5 years? How long does it take you as a husband to build a house for your wife and children, and etc.? If it's not 40 years, if it's not 50, sometimes even at 60, you're still struggling to build a house. How then do you think that you give a man a country a range of 2 years or 3 years or 5 years, and he must change the whole country? How do you budget? How do you even think as young people? How do you do a strategic plan? How do you assess the environment? How do you tender? How do you procure? How do you then begin to implement the project? To build a road only does not take 2 weeks in China. It takes 2 to 3 to 4 years of just mapping up and planning, surveying and etc. After that, quantities, bill of quantities, BQs, after BQs, tenderings, after tendering, selections, and then funding, and then implementation. You can't do that in 2 months.
In your view, what is the best model of leadership? I know there's situational leadership. There's the democracy of Gaddafi, which probably maybe I subscribe to. There's the democracy of the Americans.
Yeah.
And then there's the leadership of China, for example. What is it that you think can fit Africa.
You're asking my view.
Yes, your view.
Right, at your own risk, of course. My view is, first of all, we killed the Roman Dutch demon that is in the house. Because you cannot running Zambia with a Roman Dutch law. If this is as Roman Dutch territory, then give us Roman Dutch passports. But that's for another day. But from my perspective, the capital ideology must be removed. The capital city ideology must be removed. You decentralize the capital story to regions. For example, Livingstone can be the capital of the Department of Tourism. Are you with me? Okay. The Copper Belt can be the capital of mining and etc. Further up north, capital of agriculture. Then you move the whole ministry from Lusaka and you put the entire ministry.
Got to either Livingstone or... yes.
They move there, and they move there, and they move there. And you begin to see that you remove the stress from the capital city. And you begin to see development happening in regions. And those regions are now able to collect their taxes and utilize it within their regions. And then send a certain amount to the capital city. And here can live maybe the legislative framework where it's happening. And the government, therefore, only needs to speak to the leaders of those provinces. But these people are on the ground, and their money is on the ground. Don't tell me of a constitution where you simply elect a person to go to Lusaka. And when he goes to Lusaka, he is actually taking all your money to Lusaka. So what do you see? You see beautiful Lusaka is developing. But go downtown. There's nothing that's happening. And you cannot measure a country's development from a capital city mentality.
Is that by any way close to what the federal state would be? Because currently we have provincial ministers, but I'll tell you myself that they are not effective. We don't really, if you look at what is done in a province, you probably feel, maybe it could be my just assumption, but you probably feel we do not really need provincial ministers. But currently we have that. Are we looking at a federal state, or what is the bridge that then we...
You would find it difficult when you're using colonial frames to understand this. Let's go slowly.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about federal states. I'm talking about regions utilizing their resources where they are. Having provincial governments that are simply reporting to the head office, but they don't have the finances to support that. How about the Copper Belt? They're able to retain their resources and retain their profits to develop the Copper Belt, so to speak. How much development will you see happening there? So it's not just having a provincial leader who is reporting to Lusaka, but it's actually having a province that is able to harvest, govern, finance, develop itself, and even develop curriculums that deal with its own resources and develop its people, students, young people, entrepreneurs to speak to. You cannot leave that assignment to the capital city to come here, because most likely the capital city does not know what is happening at the bottom here. And one man in the Copper Belt, you call a premier, cannot represent all of us up here. So for me, the decentralization of the capital city mindset allows the local, regional, undermined provinces to benefit from their resources.
Let's pick it up from here, Bishop. Yours, even the moment we got to share the announcement, the official announcement, you'll be joining us for the Breakfast with the Boys. I received quite a number of phone calls. That Bishop is very controversial. And looking at Zambia as a Christian nation, I want to get...
You're starting now, eh? Now
wow, that's for another day.
That's controversial, but he is the one who is starting.
Declaration.
Who are doing fine, so now you want
listen, Bishop, listen.
It's all right.
All right, cool. But yes, I want to get what your view is, especially on how Christianity was introduced in Africa. And you, at many times, you've been able to come out very clear. You do not subscribe or you do not believe in the Christianity that many people believe in now. Let me get to you. Yes. Are you a Christian? Have you denounced Christianity? What is it that you believe in? What is your religion? What is Africa's religion?
Hush. You are not ready, young man. You are not ready. You call yourself boys. You're not ready, boys.
Big boys.
Big boys.
Yeah.
You know what? Big boys must put on big boys' pants and stop putting on diapers and napkins. If you want to play with the big boys, then we play with the big boys. But let me go for you, Chief.
Yes.
What do I believe? I don't need to believe in anything for a start, because things are existing by themselves without you. But to be frank and to be fair with your question, the God of the colonialists and the God of the Africans are not the same. The God of the slave and the God of the master are not the same. I'll explain why.
Right.
When you get to America and you get to Europe, and they're talking about their God, they're talking about their God who gives them land. They're talking about their God who makes them have dominion, have power, multiply, be fruitful, and etc. This is the God who tells them that wherever you put your foot, you're going to own those places. This is the God who tells them that I will take you to the promised land. Like the Afrikaners even believe that the whole of South Africa is the land that they were given by God. So this colonial God that I'm talking about is the one that actually gives them an advantage over their subjects and over the poor. But when you come to the African God that they have packaged and put in a small little shoebox for us, is a God that says, servants, obey your masters. Slaves, be good to your leaders.
Yes.
It is a God that says, give away your land and everything else and wait for the second coming of Jesus. He will bless you when you get to heaven. Take the world, but give me Jesus. Wow, beautiful. And you look at these two types of human beings, the colonialist, and you look at the African, and you can by no means say they are talking about the same religion and Christianity. So when you come to me with a big blanket statement and say, are you a Christian? Are you a Christian? You're not applying your mind to matter and facts, because the function of these two, this one is collecting money from the local people and giving it to his own country and developing his country. And religion has been used as a pimp when Africa is being sodomized. Where were they? Are these not the same people who were mercenaries sleeping with the missionaries? And they don't come around to me and tell me that religion has done us good. No, it has been a pacifier of our pain. Any religion that has taught us to love our enemies is not what I want to believe in. Because the God I believe in is a God of war. He says, let's go to fight and take our land back. And he would go with his people to war to claim what rightfully belongs to them. Not this one who tells us to say, give over everything that you have and I'll see you in the sweet by and by. Sweet by and by where? We are busy trying to get to heaven when the white people are on heaven already, on our own land. And whoever owns your land owns your blessings. And if you don't have land in China, it's illegal to reproduce. A man must have 2 wives. That is the land and the one who gives him children. Without territory, it's illegal to have children. You bear them to poverty and trouble. So you talk about religion, you're talking about the core existence of African ethical morality and behavior. And why are we not killing the white people? Because the religion says so. If it was in the past, a man who kills your mother and your father, you kill him also. But the religion comes and says, if a man claps you one cheek,
give the other cheek.
If it steals your jacket, give him the waistcoat also. And then here we are, trying to look Christian. But the question is, are the Europeans Christians?
Are they?
Are they Christians?
Are they?
I'm asking you. They are not Christians. 400 years they've been here. What have they done? The Chinese are here for only a few days. We're beginning to see some few things also starting to pop up that make us look like human beings. A few buildings, a few railway lines, a few airports, a few, we begin to see some form of development. When the white man was here, you talk to me. When the white man was here for all these years, what did he do?
Did you go to Europe?
I've been to Europe. I lived there.
To go and see, live with devils?
I've been to Europe. I've lived in Europe.
To go and live with the devils?
I've lived in Europe. You think globally and act locally. I benchmark my product on the international globe. I've lived in America, I've lived in Europe, and I've toured the world. I'm saying what I'm saying from a point of advantage and knowledge.
All right. Quickly, before we get to possibly get to a little bit of a different conversation, Bishop, especially on the religion part and the Christian.
But next time you ask me religious questions, I'll shoot you back and say, what do you believe?
No, I'm asking you. I can tell you.
I'm saying next time.
Next time.
I spared you today.
All right.
Because it always feels nice to shoot, But if I should take the same gun and point it at you, you may find it.
I'll prepare next time. But anyway, what should, just on this part, what do you think Africa should be able to embrace? I think from the conversation, the religion, Christianity, has done more harm than good. What is it that Africans will be able to believe in?
For those who are already intoxicated with Christianity, then we might want to use what they already have and lead them to where they want to be. What am I saying? I'm saying because the amount of entrenchment. I mean, when you hear some of your old leaders like Chubuluka going on national broadcast and declaring to the whole world that Zambia is a Christian nation. Wow, it's a huge statement.
Very huge.
Because if the Muslims had been here, he would have been saying Zambia is an Islamic nation. If the Chinese had colonized you, you'd have been saying Zambia is a Buddhist nation. So you cannot measure your nationality based on your colonization. That's rather weak in terms of thinking. You were before they came. What would we rather do? We'd rather use what you already know and lead you to what you don't know. That's my method. So if you take the Bible, for example, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Beautiful. So I'm reading it as an African.
Right.
In the beginning God created my heaven and he created my earth. And he planted me here. And he has told me that I must have power, dominion over the birds of the air, the fish of the sea. And for me, this before you even talk about the 10 commandments, this is the first commandment.
And everything else that
you must have control and power. So read the text, read that text, not from the colonial interpretations. And you cannot wait for a white man to tell you what the Bible has, because he does not even understand the culture of the same Bible. If your brother dies, go and sleep with his wife and continue that generation. Since you're already told by a white man, you say, yuck, I can't do that. And the man goes to sleep with that woman, and then he pees outside in the